Hey guys, we're back, Small Talk with the Hubs, and we are finally going to talk about the big trust. Okay, so last time we talked about our courting, dating, engagement, and this is a great segue into how we established our trust.
Yeah, so there's really four things that we want to talk about today. We were planning this talk, things come naturally for us, but we're kind of wondering like, wow, where do you really start? But there's four things, all right? So the first is establishing trust. So if you are interested in what it feels like, our experience, we're going to kind of walk through a little bit of that. The second then is building trust. You can't build before you establish. And what is something to build if you don't maintain it? So the third is maintaining trust. And then the fourth thing we want to talk about is how love and trust, how they kind of grow. They can grow at different rates. It's really important to really understand how to break that down, how you can love someone but not really trust them. That sounds really weird, but
it's so common.
Yeah, it's really common.
So, first thing, establishing your trust. Okay, for us, because I grew up with him, a lot of trust was established just because of that. And you can kind of take those things for granted, but in all relationships it's not like that. So I would say some really important things when it comes to establishing trust is, if you're the person who is trying to get someone to trust you, always be honest and true to yourself and who you are, because as soon as you try to fake it, your trust will always be broken with the other person. So I would say the base would be being honest as a person. I guess the second thing in that would be, learning who you're trying to get your trust established from. Everybody has trust issues, be it from childhood, friends, parents, ex relationships, whatever the case may be. I would think that if you could learn who you're dealing with, it makes it for you easier, because you might not ever be able to establish trust with this person if their issues are that far in advance. But always stay true to yourself and learn who you're dealing with, and that is a good start for establishing your trust.
So a few things to kind of build on that. As my wife was talking, I was thinking about like, where do you really go with establishing trust? You could probably talk for a couple hours on this. Just laying some ground rules. There's a core level of trust that we as humans, we as civilized people should have from one another. You should be able to trust that in my presence, I'm not going to deny you of access, at least in the States, of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So your core fundamental human rights to safety shouldn't be. So we're not talking about that. So if you're in an abusive relationship, if you're in a physically abusive relationship, emotionally abusive, you're in a different situation. Okay, let's just be really honest. Trust has been broken on the core level. What we're really talking about is establishing the level of trust that you have when you're investing in someone. So if you really think about it, trust is like a contract. And to have a contract with someone, you really need to know what your terms of that contract are. And how do you know those terms other than really being self-reflective? I learned that from my wife. I'm a people pleaser, okay? So my terms of the contract really are just to make you happy, whatever I can do to make you happy. Well, if you don't understand, and I didn't fully understand the level of wanting to please Maria, what the implications are, because part of being in a trust situation is understanding that you can depend on that individual. One of the reasons that we have contracts, we have laws, is because we can depend on those things. So for me, one of the key things, beyond the ground rules and beyond all of that setting, is understanding myself, which I've had to do a better job at that, daily getting better, and really affirming Maria through my commitment, my stated commitment. I will not do you harm. I plan to do you well. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to forsake you. I love you. I'm going to take care of you. There are some of those times, even as you're establishing trust, where you may find yourself being critical, nitpicky of an individual, but you have to have patience with yourself, and they have to have patience with you, because what are you doing? You're establishing something. You're understanding what their terms of engagement are. what your terms of engagement are, and that's very important in a relationship.
Okay, I'll give you a real life scenario. You should know at this point, this is both of our second marriage. My first marriage, the gentleman I was married to had a child with another woman. Not during the marriage, but before we got married. So in that marriage, I had to deal with a lot of drama and just a lot of extra. So I'm out of that relationship and I start dating my husband now. And he too has children from his previous marriage. And here we are dating, and my taste buds have been scorned basically from situations such as that. So I don't necessarily want to be in a relationship where I don't mind being a step parent or being around someone else's children. That's never been an issue. I don't want the drama that comes along with it. So my husband established in the very beginning that was something I would not have to deal with. And he laid a foundation from the beginning of our courting and dating that situation is resolved. Everything has been taken care of with that situation. And he just really, really made me feel comfortable, and I trust the situation. Not only because he told me, but he just included me in so many things that he didn't have to include me in. Like, once we got married, I understand their divorce decree. I've spoken with his ex. Like, it's just a lot of things that have just been laid out that have taken away any doubt that I am going to have to deal with drama from him or this woman when it comes to their children. And that's just one example, and that's a big example for people who are married. Nowadays, somebody's had kids. So you're gonna have to deal with that, and establishing that trust for the other person is so paramount. Like, I just don't even know how to establish or tell you guys that is so important. And he did that before he even asked me to marry him. I knew that situation was solid. I had no problems with meeting them, meeting her, being around them, nothing. It was smooth sailing.
So to really build on that, and pardon the pun, that really is a great transition into, so we talked about establishing trust, really building trust. I have a great relationship with my ex. I have a great relationship with my kids. We've really, really worked hard at that. Mutually exclusive of each other. Maria works hard at it as well. She allows for a good relationship. So, however, as you use that example to talk about building trust, I understood the ground rules that had to be laid. I've got buddies that have been in situations where they have difficulties with an ex. I knew Maria's previous situation as well, so there were some core promises that I had to make her. And sometimes you don't know the extent of what those things are going to be. But as a few examples, so whenever I have communication with my ex, be it small, be it major, I always consult my wife. I either blind copy her or I tell her about the conversations. I make that very, very routine. She knows. Before decisions are made, I consult her as well. Even though those are my ex and I's kids, I am married to Maria. Another thing that I found really, really important was to establish to her that she comes before anybody. We just had a new baby boy. She comes before Garrison.
He comes
she
before
comes
Garrison.
Before my kids as well, from my previous. I love them. I would do anything for them. But my wife comes before them. So those are some of the building blocks that helped us establish. But really, really, what keeps you in that building mode is continuing to understand yourself. How can you be better? And I really, really have to give my wife credit, because part of the thing that I did to her was, hey, you're not going to have to deal any type of situation with my ex. I called it burying Maria behind the scenes. All right. And what I really meant by that is no passing messages from me. Hey, tell my ex I said this, or tell so and so I said that. I made a commitment to be my own man and deal with that situation myself. But in that, Maria was able to see, and thus I had to trust her eyesight on some areas where I could improve. And I would not have the quality relationship with my ex, and probably even with my kids, had it not been for being able to trust her, trust Maria, in her insights and her wisdom on what she saw, which was me trying to do what I thought was the best. I had to trust her and be vulnerable to her, that she may know something better to me than I knew in that situation. And that helped us take our relationship, my ex and I, to a whole nother level. Focusing, of course, on on building two little wonderful individuals, but also fostering a relationship that was not constrained by any type of past stuff that went on between us?
I would say that when dealing with maintaining trust, as in our situation, I'll just use our situation again, my job as his wife is to show him that I trust him. My job is not to second guess him, even if for instance I don't get the second part of the email, or I don't get that they talked 3 days ago. I have to have trust within his intentions and who he is as a person and what he's already established. Regardless if he made a mistake, I have to be willing to be adult enough and mature enough to be like, we all drop the ball sometimes and it's okay. And those have never been an issue for us. This is just an example. But I really just want to reiterate, in maintenance of trust, you have to show your partner that I'm receiving that you're trying to get me to trust you, and I trust you. That is a big part of maintenance. I can't just keep trying to force him to trust me, and every second I do something, he's, what you doing? Who is that? Whatever. You can't battle against the trust that's been established if there's no reason to, and the person genuinely is doing what they're supposed to do. If you are doing that in a relationship, I would beg to ask you to question yourself. Now, I could have easily been like, oh, well, I know you still love her, or I could have been petty and just so immature about the situation, and he could do whatever it takes to make me feel like he wouldn't. But if I had hang-ups over my ex or whatever I went through because of a situation similar, it didn't matter what he did if I wasn't willing to accept it. So if you're in a situation and you're that person who's working, you're down to your nubs to get this person to trust you and understand that you are really there in their corner and they aren't accepting it, it's not you. And you need to ask them to question why this is something that's continuing if you have not given them a reason to question your trust. If you are the person who's questioning, take a second to really ask why you're questioning. That could be another talk. We can talk about self-esteem in a relationship, you know what I'm saying? But I just think that that is a very important part in maintenance. You have to be willing to accept the trust. If you can't accept the trust, then there's nothing to maintain. So. And
that's really an interesting piece. So it's a little bit of an oxymoron here. Okay, we're talking about, we talked about establishing. Mm-hmm. We slid right into talking about building, the building blocks of trust, and really gotten into maintenance as well. And when you unpack the term maintain, one of the unique things, what makes an oxymoron with trust, is that to actually maintain trust, to maintain the status quo, to maintain good trust, takes a lot of work. All right. Now that work comes very, very natural. Mm-hmm. But if you use this analogy, if you think about, and we'll talk about love and trust in a few seconds here. But if you think about love as like big muscles, all right? Mm-hmm. If love is big muscles, then trust is endurance. You ever seen that person that's got huge muscles,
couldn't run
around the block, couldn't run to save their lives,
couldn't.
All right? When you think about that person that had just phenomenal, like a Kenyan runner or somebody who's a distance runner, but doesn't have any muscles, okay? They probably couldn't lift their own body weight. All right, they may be able to lift their own body, but they're not strong. A good relationship, really believe, has to have a maintained balance of love and trust. And to really have that balance of trust means you have to work. It means I have to trust Maria. There are times in our relationship when she comes to me, and the way that I have to practice maintenance, which is really hard, is it could be little something. Hey, you should consider washing the dishes this way. It is we're a two type A people, set in our ways. Another thing that's unique about us, which probably isn't so unique in this day and age, is we're older. All right, we're not in our 20s and we're married. All right, so going on our second year. But beyond that, once you get in your 30s, you kind of know how you want to do it, when you want to do it, what you want to do, and how you manage a house in your life. It takes a lot of trust, and one of the great areas to practice building trust in your relationship is in the small areas. So when your spouse comes to you and says, hey, you should consider, or why don't you consider X, Y, Z? Why don't you consider mowing the grass this way? Or why don't you may know that that's wrong. Try it. Just try it. It's a wonderful way to reaffirm them that you have trust. That's one way that you can maintain trust. Another way is just to really be self-introspective, to understand, you know, what am I bringing to the table? What am I doing? Am I demonstrating myself trustworthy? You know, me, I'm an intent person, all right? I intend and I mean the world, all right? And sometimes I overpromise, and that means I underdeliver.
So, and then this was an actual issue in the beginning of our marriage. He would be so heartbroken if I would be upset that something didn't go the way that he said it would go. His thoughts behind that was, well, my intent was to really get that done. I really was going to get that done for you. It just didn't happen. And he felt that I should be like, well, thank you. Your intent was so great. And I understand you couldn't get it done.
I really had to grow out of that.
But my issue is, in the real world, your intentions can be great, but the job still didn't get done. And I can't celebrate your intent and the job still didn't get done. And with that comes disappointment, and we have to be accepting of the disappointment, but your intent does not equate that just because you didn't get the job done that it's still okay.
Yeah. It doesn't equal impact.
Right.
So for us, I had to that was a significant area that I had to grow. I had to grow to allow Maria to give me critical feedback, loving feedback, but also feedback that ultimately had to make me better. And what I was doing was putting a blockade in front of her by putting up my intent. Well, of course she knows that I mean to do her well and I'm a good guy, but when I would put that blockade up, it would shut her down. And part of being in a trusting relationship is understanding that, and you need to put yourself in this position as well. Okay, this is part of that establishing and building. By the time you get to the maintenance standpoint, you really shouldn't be questioning if that person has your best intent at heart. So for me, I was showing immaturity at that point in our relationship by even bringing that to Maria. Because what that basically said to her was that she was operating on a level of trust that might have been a little bit higher, where she could trust me enough that she could be vulnerable and let me know how she felt. Well, I wasn't there to really receive her critical feedback because maybe I was still in the build mode instead of the maintenance mode. So it's easy to get those terms, you know, mixed up and confused. But all that we can say out of that is it takes work. It takes practice. It takes patience. It takes diligence. Remember, it's like that strong man and it's like that man that can run, you know, 21 miles. You've got to have a delicate balance between the two of those, which probably is that a good segue into love and trust? Or you got some more?
No, love and I'm ready for love and trust.
Cool.
Okay, I'm gonna separate this conversation from my marriage, and we're gonna go back to the dating Maria. And this is something that, you know, I was guilty of as a woman dating. You would really like a guy. I wouldn't even say strong words of love. I would say infatuation. You really like him. You might think you love him, but in the same breath, you don't trust him. That's what we're talking about with love and trust not being on the same level. So how to establish love and trust and get them on the same playing field or on the same level is so important in a relationship that's long-term and that you want to go the 75 years of marriage or whatever. You want it to go the long run, and sometimes one comes before another. I honestly have to say that my trust, if you listen to our dating video we did a little while back or last month, you would hear our story. So I've known him, I've grown up with him in my life. So my trust of him and who he was, I trusted that, you know, he wasn't promiscuous, he didn't cheat. Those things were already established because I know who he is, and I knew who he was. So in our situation, I have to honestly say trust was probably established before love was established. And I've been in so many other situations where that's been the other way around. And I have to say, for me and my own insecurities as a woman and the things that I might question about a man loving me, this was the bomb setup for me. I actually trusted him. Like, it's so hard to get there. I find it so easy to love, but it's so hard to trust your heart wholeheartedly with somebody else. So for us, I think trust was established first. How that was done, we weren't dating, we weren't trying to date, we were just in each other's lives, and we could see how each one of us really were before the pressure or the stress of dating can come along. So with that being said, if you are newly dating and you're still watching, slow down. I know that sounds crazy and everything could be a whirlwind, and that's what we want, this passion and romance, and we want to feel like we're in a movie or a novel, and that's not always the best. Really observe each other. Don't be so quick to jump down each other's throats or try to finish a sentence for the other person. Really see what they're gonna say and see how they're gonna handle things, and see how they handle that server that just messed up your order. Just observe all of that, because that's another part of trust. Trust is something that you gain, but trust is also something that you accept. And when you accept that a person is a way that they are, that's the trust. You trust that they're not going to veer off so far to the left or the right, because you've established in your own mind, this is who this person is and this is how they are. I can put my blood on that. I can go to war for him because I know how he is. So if somebody came to me and was like, I saw Bo down the street with a Susie sandwich head and he was feeling on her booty, I know for a fact that was not the case. So just knowing who your mate is, I'm sorry that was a stupid example, but just knowing who your mate is will help you get it on the same playing field. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, you know, Maria talks about love being, you know, it is passionate, it is excitement, it is, you know, for me, Maria was my crush when I was in high school. So it wasn't really about trust. It was about, she was just beautiful. I remember being in class and remember seeing her and just thinking like she just was the ideal woman that I was attracted to. And as I got to know her more,
I was his prototype.
She was my prototype. And as I got to know her more, that changed. But I really think that our relationship, even though I approached it from an angle of attraction, she ultimately approached it from an angle of trust. You know, I know his family, I know him, I've seen him, you know, he's a pretty decent guy. You know, I can trust that, I can depend on that. My encouragement would be to start a relationship based on trust. You know, it's really, really old school. It may not sound very exciting, but I would contend that you could probably, this is for the ladies, probably the fellas out there too, if you find someone you can trust, you find someone that has your best interest at hand, by the core notion of having your best interest at hand, I'm not talking about people pleasing. And
you're going to want to do all the other stuff, I'm telling you.
That will come.
It will come so easy when you truly have that connection.
Yeah.
Like,
you do have to have a core level of attraction on some level, you know,
oh,
hey,
yeah.
You like this, I like that, oh, we like each other, great. However, there's a tremendous sense of security. You know, with love comes a lot of passion. Love can have some ups and it can have some downs, but there's a tremendous amount of security in being able to trust someone. My wife takes an annual trip down to Miami, to South Beach, you know, with her girls. I trust her. If I don't hear from her when she's hanging out, I like to hear from her, you know, but if I don't, I'm not hunting the phone and pecking and wondering, you know, what's going on, you know. That's what trust looks like in our relationship. But one of the unique things about trust and about love is on a fundamental level, there's some things that are similar or the same across all people, but there's some wrinkles that are just a little bit different. If the terms of your agreement for your love and your trust are to look at your mate's cell phone and ask them questions about that, if that individual is okay with that and that those flies in your relationship, great, that's what works for you all.
And you have to do what works for you all.
And you have to do what works for you. So as we kind of wrap things down, you have to remember, you know, we talked about, you know, establishing trust, we talked about building trust, we talked about maintaining, all of those topics, you know, we could expound upon, you know, for a long, long time. But I think the most important thing that we could say in any type of marital advice or relationship advice that we give is each couple has their own walk that they have to take. You can't walk in our shoes and expect the same results. But if you can understand the general notion of, hey, I love this individual, but I'm not quite there trusting that individual yet. To me, that is a yellow sign. That's caution. okay? A green light is I love this individual, I trust this individual, and that's what I knew when I met my wife and we were ready to get married. I knew that if she didn't change a single iota for the rest of her life, I was willing to accept her just as she was, because I trusted that she had my best intent at heart, and I knew that I loved her and she loved me. And if you're at a point in your relationship, not to sound preachy, but if you're at a point in your relationship with somebody and you're trying to think about that next big step, you know, can you accept that person for who they are right now?
Right now.
Right now, with no changes?
No changes.
That's the question that I had to ask myself. And that's when I knew that I was ready to say I do. And it's not that I do in the sense of just the romantic marital vows. It was I do in the sense of I do accept you and trust you and love you this day for the rest of my life, thinking that if you never change, if you never get better, I still love you. So that's all I got.
That's all I got too. So thanks guys for listening, and we really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys, well, the both of us will see you guys next month. I'll see you next week. But what do you think about conflict?
A teaser. Conflict is a path to intimacy. Lock that in your mind. That's an area that we've had to deal with. Maria talked a little bit about it. Yes, that's all I'll say on that. That would be a wonderful topic.
A wonderful topic. Conflict next month. See you guys soon. Bye.
What's small talk for men is different for ladies, and what's small talk for ladies is different for men. My mom made the recommendation to Maria, why don't you date my son?
And I was like, sorry, honey.